Good morning, Joe. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Good morning, Gary. No problem. How are you?
Very well. Good to have you, Joe, coming to us on the Bud Light Hotline presented by Adams Beverages. And, Joe, before we get to the Los Angeles Dodgers, let's talk football. Great opportunity for us to chat with you since you were on the call Friday night watching Washington and calling the action as they beat Colorado. They get the Crimson Tide. We all know what Alabama's about, but tell us about this Washington football team, what you saw and what you think of their chances against Alabama on New Year's Eve in Atlanta.
Yeah, we've had them a few times this year, and I've had them actually a few times each of the last few years. So the entire time Chris Peterson's there, and I've got to see the way that he's built the program and the way they've improved over his 3 years. And right now, I mean, it's a team that I think, especially defensively, I'd put up with anybody in the country.
Well,
you know what you need to do if you are playing Alabama to have any kind of shot is at least be able to stand your ground up front. And they can do that. They're 315, 320, 325 across the board on the defensive front. So they're going to be bigger than anybody Alabama has seen so far. I had a couple people tweet at me this morning and say, well, what about LSU? And it's really not close. I mean, if you take a look at the depth chart, at least with the starters for Washington, with Elijah Qualls and Greg Gaines and Vita Vea, these are huge guys that are also really athletic. So, you know, up front, they're really good. They've got 2 NFL draft pick corners. They've got a safety who is going to be an NFL draft pick. They've got the freshman of the year in the conference at the other safety. Some people think he's going to be better than the guy that is headed to the NFL. So defensively, they're as good as anybody. I mean, you know, when you look at like the top 100 draft prospects, Alabama's all over the place. But the team that's right behind them as far as number of elite prospects is Washington. So especially on the defensive side, and then we know about Jake Browning, the Heisman contender at quarterback, and the options he has on offense.
You know, Joe, fans, and a lot of fans are going to look at the USC football team, and they're going to say Alabama beat USC 52-6, even though it was the first game before the quarterback change, all of that, and then they're going to remember that USC, and I watched a lot of that game, I thought physically handled Washington pretty well. And I know that's a simplistic view, and a lot has changed from the start of the season until now. But what about that argument that Alabama blew out USC and USC handled Washington, and that means Alabama should be able to handle Washington easily?
I think that the big part is what you hit on, and what I'm sure anybody that tries to argue against it goes to, and that is that the USC team that Washington played is totally different than the USC team Alabama played. I'd love to see USC Alabama now. Not saying by any means USC would beat Alabama, but it'd be a lot closer with Sam Darnold at quarterback. And then on the other side of the ball, what USC was able to do that nobody else has done is get pressure on Jake Brown.
Right.
When he's able to stand back there, scan the defense, take his time, he's as good of a thrower, as accurate of a thrower as there is in the country. But USC moved him off his spot. He wasn't comfortable, and he wasn't very good, and they got behind and had to desert the run. When they lose balance, as with really anybody in football, you know, you're going to struggle. So that would be my biggest concern if I was Washington. I mean, who across the country can block Alabama? I'm not sure there's anybody. And the one team that's been able to be unblocked against Washington is the one team that beat them.
Let's talk more about Browning, because a lot of the analysts say the key to beating Alabama is not just having a good quarterback, but having great quarterback play on that day. Really a quarterback that steps up and plays exceptional. We know Browning's capable. As you mentioned, he can throw it. He's athletic. He can use his legs some. But he's been, I guess, a little consistent. His completion percentage is not great. Talk about him, as you said, you've seen him a lot. What is he capable of against a defense like Alabama? And if he plays well, it seems like Washington may have a chance for an upset.
You know, going into the Pac-12 championship game, I would have argued with you and said that the completion percentage really is impressive, and he is top 5 in the country in efficiency. When you toss out the USC game, he's the best in the country as far as efficiency and completion percentage. So I would have argued, well, that was just kind of a flash in the pan kind of thing where you don't have to worry about that again. But we saw him on Friday night not look very good. You've got to remember, I guess, that Colorado, by some metrics, by some measures, is considered the best pass defense in the country. So, if you are taking that as comfort, if you're a Washington fan, for why Jake Browning didn't look as good, then okay. But it gives me a little bit of pause seeing that he's had 2 games now, and really 2.5 if you go back to the Arizona State game as well, which followed the USC game. He was great in the second half, but he was not very good in the first half. So I don't know if I'd say inconsistent because he's been so good for so much of the season, but there have been times where he's not been good at all. And if it happens to be one of those days against Alabama, Washington has no shot.
Visiting with Joe Davis, Fox Sports play-by-play broadcaster, also the television play-by-play voice of the Los Angeles Dodgers. He called the Pac-12 championship game this past Friday night between Washington and Colorado. Joe, I want to ask you about the experience factor, and we'll get to Chris Peterson and the job he's done in a moment. But for Alabama, this is old hat. They're the only team that's been in all 3 of the college football playoffs. Before that, they were a regular in the BCS championship game. For Washington, a proud program, but this is new territory for this particular Washington team. They've got to fly across country to a venue in the Georgia Dome that Alabama's very familiar with. Some would say almost like a second home. Is that a factor at all, the experience, the travel, Alabama comfort level in the Georgia Dome? Is that a negative for Washington? Or, you know, it's a football field, it's a stadium, it's a game. Is all that equal out once they get on the field?
I think Chris Peterson may try to tell you that none of that matters, but I think you and I both know that it probably is a factor. You know, it's a really tough place to play Alabama, and let's be honest, it doesn't matter where you play Alabama, it's going to be tough. You know, one thing I'll say is that if there's any coach who you are scared to play, given how much time he's going to have to spare, it may be Chris Peterson. You know, we've seen when he was at Boise, then beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl years back, and all the trick pieces that he pulled out to get that win. He's fabulous. He's brilliant as a head coach. So I don't know. And it's not like the guy on the other sideline is a slouch. So you know, I don't know how much that mitigates it. But I would be a little bit wary if I was an Alabama fan of giving Chris Peterson that much time to get ready. I think that's one aspect where the playing field could be leveled some. You know, when it's tilted in Alabama's favor so much with the things you mentioned.
The job Peterson's done, and he had chances to leave Boise prior for good jobs, and a lot of folks felt like, well, Boise's just a fit for him. But he said it was time when he left. He took the Washington job. Of course, some pieces were in place there. Steve Sarkisian had done a good job of recruiting, but he has taken this program to the next level. You already alluded in a one-game scenario where he has time to prepare. He might be as good a coach as there is in America. But just talk about the job he's done there, building this program to this point and navigating the waters this year to get them into the Final Four.
You know, it's his 11th season as a coach, and it's the 7th 11-win season he's had. So 7 of his 11 years, he's reached 11 wins, and you know, now try and go for 12 of them. Or already does have 12. Well, now try and go for school record 13. I mean, it's remarkable what he's done. When you go into a place, even if it is set up well, like Washington was with Steve Sarkisian, as you mentioned, I don't think that you think that you're 2 years away at that point from reaching the heights that they've reached. So, I mean, it's a testament to Chris Peterson and his coaching ability and his staff and their ability to recruit, but it's also a testament to Washington, I think, is kind of a sleeping giant. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a beautiful campus. It's gorgeous. Yeah. You know, beautiful campus. The stadium is as wonderful of a setting as there is in college football. So I can see why guys would want to go there and play for him. It's a really nice combination of things. And, you know, I think that there were probably, even though it's ahead of schedule, I'm sure there were people around the Pac-12 and even nationally a couple of years ago when Washington made that hire that thought, uh-oh.
We mentioned Sark, and let's talk about his presence at Alabama. He recruited most of those seniors. He knows that program. Toss LaFoy, another former Washington assistant on the staff. We don't know what Sarkisian's role may be. He could be the play caller, depending on what happens with Lane Kiffin. Is that an advantage for Alabama, or is that a little bit overrated having a former Washington head coach on your staff?
Yeah, I don't see it being really anything at all. If anything, really small. You got to remember, Chris Peterson has 3 years of recruiting classes there, and most of the key pieces on that team are guys that he brought in. So there's that, and even if that wasn't the case, this system is entirely Chris Peterson's and Pete Kwiatkowski's on defense. There is no carryover from when Sarkisian was there.
This matchup, I can tell you really think a lot. You, as you said, you've seen them often. You think a lot of this Washington program. Alabama, meanwhile, is going for another national championship under Nick Saban. Just this one game scenario, how do you see it? Do you think that Washington is capable of coming in here and winning the game, or when all is said and done, is Alabama just too much for them?
I mean, I'd like to think that they have a chance, just because I enjoy close games. You know, I would love to tune in on New Year's Eve and see it come right down to the wire. But I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen like that. You know, I would not be surprised if Alabama won by a few scores. You know, Washington's really good. They're the class of the Pac-12. They're really good on defense. They've got some really talented guys on offense. But thinking back to what USC did, able to put pressure on Browning and how that shut down the Washington offense, there is no pass rush in the country like Alabama's. So that for me is the biggest concern if I'm somebody looking at the game hoping that it stays close, like I am. You know, I worry about that.
Joe, before we turn you loose, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Los Angeles Dodgers. Terrific season, came up a little bit short. Of course, I think we all felt like the Cubs were the best team all year long, and they proved that to be the case. But Dave Roberts, in his first year, did a tremendous job of guiding that club, and they were really close. Just talk about the season with the Dodgers, and next year, if you think they can take the next step and win it all.
Yeah, it was awesome seeing what Dave Roberts did in his first year. I mean, unanimously across that clubhouse, guys would tell you that they loved him, that he was the perfect guy for the job. And ultimately, the Cubs, like you said, just were kind of a team of destiny this year. I'm not sure that anybody was going to beat them. So it's anytime you got Clayton Kershaw, though, you feel good going into the season. And there's a couple key free agents for the Dodgers, and Kenley Jansen is the closer, Justin Turner at third base that I know they'd love to bring back, and then build from there. So it'll be interesting to see the moves they make, but I think those are the priorities, trying to preserve some of the key pieces that have helped them win 4 division titles. Because I don't think you want to totally revamp things when you've had, even though it hasn't resulted in World Series championships, it's resulted in 4 consecutive division championships. So I'm not sure you want to completely blow things up, and I don't think they will. I think it'll be trying to re-sign those guys and then add a couple complementary pieces.
And, Joe, for you as a broadcaster, incredible opportunity, and you got to witness the Vin Scully farewell tour, I think certainly one of the greatest baseball play-by-play men in the history of the game. And to be a part of that, what was that like? And now to step in as the number one Dodgers play-by-play voice for television, that's quite a accomplishment for you at a rather young age. Just being around Vin and learning from him and now having this opportunity, what's that all about?
Yeah, it was pretty special to watch so many people share the way they felt about Vin, and see him get the honors that he deserved and the attention that he deserved down the stretch. And I'll never forget that last home game of the regular season where they rallied to send the game into extras, and then Vin's final call at Dodger Stadium was a division-clinching walk-off home run. I mean,
that's right.
We joke around that it's like a Hollywood script right there just outside of Hollywood, but it was the kind of script that would get turned away for not being believable enough on that final day of the season. So that's the day that I'll never forget.
As a Midwest guy, how do you like living in LA? Is it fun? Is it difficult? What is it?
We're actually not out there yet, since I just did road games this year, and Vin just did home games. We're moving in January, but as I watch the snow come down here in Michigan, I can tell you I'm feeling pretty good about the move.
You won't miss the snow. Hey, Joe, I appreciate it, man. Great insight, and you're doing a terrific job. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Gary. Good to talk to you.